I don't know if I talked about it in the book, but I've mentioned it before. When I start working for a client, I never ask them when they need the work done, ever. I tell them when I can get to it. And this way, I'm in control of my schedule. Because when I have to start managing somebody else's deadlines, my life becomes unmanageable. Now, I'm flexible and all that, but I've never had anybody say my time didn't work for them. So by taking control of my schedule, I cut down my stress, and I always add a few extra days, and then I deliver early and I look like a hero, and I haven't stressed myself out, and I don't have to be angry and resentful of them because I didn't take care of myself going into the situation. So I'm learning, there are things I can do, and I'm not a jerk about it. I'm not obnoxious about it. It's nothing like that. It's just me knowing that I cannot do my best work for a client if I have a deadline hanging over me that I have no control over. And then, and I always say, affirmations alone are not always enough. If back in 2009, I just sat around all day meditating, I'm a wonderful photographer, but I never actually learned how to do it. I never got the training I needed. I never got the resources that I needed. The whole thing would have been a joke. So the affirmations are really helpful and really important. And is there anything else I need to do so I can change how I see myself in that situation? And sometimes the way I change how I see myself in that situation is by getting the education that I need. It's by getting the experience I need. It's by getting the resources that I need. Now, just like when I talked about the effect of addictive and compulsive behavior, I said what happens is we make a choice or decision because we want to feel better, but ultimately we feel worse. And eventually that's what was happening to me with especially how I was spending my time. I could feel something was off when I was spending hours and hours and hours watching TV and playing video games. And in particular, it was my way of not dealing with the fact that I was afraid to put myself out there as a photographer. I was afraid to make those marketing calls. I was afraid to submit my work for publication, for shows and exhibitions. So what I thought was going to make me feel better, eventually it led to me feeling worse. Because one day I woke up and I realized, I got to do something if I want to make this career transition happen. So we want to be conscious, what are we valuing in our lives, and is that serving us? And the whole point of this whole chapter is, learning how to make better choices and decisions. Because when we make better choices and decisions, we have a better life. Really, that's what it comes down to. So being aware of why we're doing what we're doing, why we're choosing what we're choosing, being aware of what we're valuing and saying, is this really serving me? Is this in my best interest? Is this moving me forward? Is this getting me closer to where I want to be, or is this leaving me further away from where I want to be? Now, of course, that presupposes we know where we want to be. So that's why it's really important to have a vision for your life. It's important to have goals. It's important to have something that you're moving towards. So you can know if your choices and decisions are moving you closer to or further away from that goal. It doesn't have to be, the biggest goal ever or anything like that, but we need to have some sense of where we want to go, and then we need to have some sense of whether or not our choices and decisions are getting us there or moving us closer to that. All right, so we want to think about that. We want to think about, what we value in life, and is that serving us or not. And again, I find it really interesting that we use the verb spend in relation to both time and money. So I talked about how I keep a written record. I keep a written record of my money, so I know at the end of every month exactly where my money came from and where it went. And that helps me to say, am I making choices with my money that are serving me? And for about 5 years, I wrote down just about every hour during the day of what I was doing. So I had more clarity. Here's the other thing. Keeping a written record of something gives us clarity. And as I was saying earlier, when our fears are just kind of rattling around in our heads, they can be a lot more scary. It can seem a lot more overwhelming and onerous. Whereas when we start writing them down on paper, it makes them more manageable. We have clarity. When we have clarity, we may not like where we're at, but at least now we know what we're up against. When I don't have clarity, when there's just a bunch of stuff, vague fears and notions bouncing around in my head, I don't really know what I'm up against, and it seems a lot worse than it is. So clarity comes from writing things down. Write down how you spend your time, write down how you spend your money. I know there are people in 12-step programs who write down their food, if that's a challenge for them. There are lots of ways that we can bring more clarity into our decision-making process and ultimately make better choices and decisions, which is the whole point of all of this.